So you were traveling out of state or within
Yeah,
the state?
we have a real estate event in New York City tomorrow, Brooklyn. So I was in New York moving around.
Cool. Man, I had everything. I had all my questions lined up at work, and I left that sheet. But
Being one of those kind of days, huh?
I should be able to work it out though. So usually what I do is I just kind of ask like how you got started, what your earlier deals went like, and if you can kind of be like as detailed as possible, like purchase price, amount you spent in rehab, all that stuff, to kind of give the people just more information. It kind of follows like the Bigger Pocket Style podcast.
Okay.
So
how is my audio? Because I hear a bit of an echo.
I hear an echo too, but you know what I'm going to do is usually I wear headphones anyway, so that should cut down on that, at least on my end. So let me check. Can you try that again?
Okay.
Are you in like an open room or something?
Yeah, I am. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can put my headphones in. That'll help.
Let me see.
Okay, I can't charge at the same time, but let me put these in. Okay, is this any better?
That's a lot better. Well, it's good.
Okay.
It's good. Yep.
Okay.
Cool. So this is the Todd Capital Millionaire Podcast. This is episode number 46. My name is Charles Oglesby. I'm also known as Todd Millionaire on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter. The founder and the director of the Todd Capital Investment Club. We have over 200 members. Also the founder of Todd Acquisitions, which is our crowdfunded real estate fund. And then Todd Ventures, which is our venture capital fund. Thank you all for tuning in. The purpose of this podcast is to share the stories of successful African-American investors and business owners so that people can hear the stories of successful examples and learn that business and investing are the true keys to financial success and generational wealth. Today we have Miss Nita. It's so cool because a lot of times successful people hang out with other successful people. And we recently had Kendra Barnes on the show, and I actually found Nita through Kendra Barnes, her Instagram and her social media posts. And so I followed her, and I kind of was watching some of her Instagram stories, and I saw this really cool story about how she got started, the things that she went through and the ups and downs. And so I wanted to kind of her to tell that story, tell how she got started in real estate investing and just the success that she's had, the great deals that she's done. And so with that, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Very cool. So how did you get started in real estate?
So one night I was browsing World Star Hip Hop, like I'm sure many of us do, and I came across a video from a brother named Mark Whitten out of Baltimore, Maryland, and he was talking about, at that time, I believe his saying was flip houses like your hair is on fire, something like that. And he was talking about, how you could acquire properties with no cash or no credit. And at that point, it was incredibly appealing to me because I didn't have any cash or any credit. So I'm like, this is right up my alley. And so he had some free material that he was giving out. So I went through his free material, and after that, I always say I just really kind of got bit, by the real estate bug. And I owe that to Mark Whitten. I actually had a chance to, share it with him. But he was where he introduced the concept of wholesaling to me, which again was a strategy that allowed you to acquire properties without cash or credit. And because again, I didn't have either, the strategy was incredibly appealing to me. So I got introduced from there, and then, I took it and kind of ran with it.
That's cool. And so, what did your career look like after you had watched those videos and you took from that what you did?
So at the time, I was working a menial job. I've had several pretty decent jobs over the years. None of them ever quite panned out. But at that point, again, I was just kind of bit by the real estate bug, and like, again, so many of us do when we hear about the power of real estate. It's exciting and appealing and attractive. And so from there, I kind of just started. I didn't have any money to, buy a course or get a mentor or anything like that. I was truly on a shoestring budget. So I had to kind of do things the hard way. I was, started perusing the internet for free information, all the videos and podcasts and things like that I can get my hands on. I would do things like property management companies and other investors and stuff like that I knew in Cleveland. I would offer, my services to work for them. I used to shovel snow for a property management company, just kind of to get, the information on how a real estate transaction went and the terminology and things like that. So I would say about 8 months after me truly committing to taking, kind of massive, consistent action, 8 months after that point is when I did my first deal.
Nice. And so during those 8 months, what were you doing to get that first deal?
I was marketing. My main form of marketing was bandit signs. Again, nowadays, a lot of people, in terms of the bandit sign game, people are, buying the corrugated plastic, pre-printed signs and with stakes and things like that. But again, what I always tell people about wholesaling is not a myth. It is a real strategy that will allow you to acquire real estate without using any of your own cash or credit. But how you get there in terms of your marketing, now that's where the money does help in a lot of cases. So for me, again, I didn't have that. So what I would do is I would go to stores and I would get their old boxes. So I would go to grocery stores and, different stores like that and ask for their old boxes that they were going to throw out anyway. And I would just, break them up. I would get like 4 signs out of one box, and I would get me a, huge Sharpie, make my own bandit signs every Friday morning at 5 o'clock. I'm up riding around Cleveland, posting my bandit signs. And that's actually how I did my first deal, was from a bandit sign. So that was what I really spent that 8 months kind of doing, is learning to be consistent with it. Any form of marketing, it's not going to work unless you commit to consistency. So that's what I was doing for those 8 months.
That's cool. I like how you started with what you had. And another thing that you did is a lot of times, like on the Bigger Pockets podcast, they'll talk about you have events and then you have systems. And so a lot of people are waiting for that event. They're waiting for that deal instead of putting in a strategy over consistent time basis. So every Friday you're putting out signs. Like, that's what it takes. You have to have something where, like, that you're doing something every single week at a certain time. And then if you keep doing that, then the results will come.
Exactly.
So for people who don't know what wholesaling is, can you kind of explain that to them?
So wholesaling is, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a real estate strategy that, again, it allows you to acquire properties with no cash or no credit. You probably see a lot of people who refer to themselves or call themselves wholesalers. I disagree with that, because wholesaling is, again, but one strategy that a real estate investor can have in his or her tool belt. You know what I mean? Whatever situation, strategy the situation calls for should be the one that you're using. But wholesaling, again, it will allow you to acquire properties without using your own cash or credit.
Very cool. So a lot of times when you wholesale, you get a property below the market value. Sometimes that can be tough. How do you go about getting properties at a deal, at a bargain, so that it makes sense as an investor, so that you make your money on the buy?
It's targeted marketing. That's what it is, because it's not the house or the property. It's the circumstance of the seller that really makes the deal. I liken it to a pawn shop. You know what I mean? You have things in pawn shops that are worth twice what, they have them in there for. But for whatever reason, that owner of that item at that point, the cash money was more important to them than whatever that item was. And it's the same thing with wholesaling. You've got to use targeted marketing so you can identify those people who, for whatever reason, whatever circumstance in their life, at that point, they would prefer, or they would need money more so over that house. And that's how you're able to get them at such a huge discount.
That's great information. So what did your first deal look like?
My first deal. So I had, before I got all the way to the closing table, like, again, many newbies starting out, I had several deals under contract. A couple of them I had found buyers for, but for whatever reason was just not able to close. So this particular deal, I can't remember the name of the street, but I know it was on the east side of Cleveland. It was a duplex. And like I said, it came off of a bandit sign. It was an older gentleman. I won't forget him because he was very, very nice to me. I think he sensed that I was new, but he was very nice and patient with me. It was an older gentleman who he had owned the property for years, once lived in it, owned it for years, and was just kind of tired of being a property owner, didn't want to fix it up, didn't want to pay taxes, just really didn't want to be bothered with it. So he called the sign. And so I went out to the property, I had my little sheet and all my little checklist of, pertinent information that I wanted to get and repair information, took my pictures. Surprisingly enough, the first offer that I made to him, I can't remember the exact numbers, but the first offer that I made to him, he accepted, which I wasn't expecting him to, because I had done, the formula that they teach you, the MAO formula, you know what I mean? And I had it down, to a T. I was confident, I had run my numbers, but I just didn't expect him to accept. But again, that's why I say it's so important, the circumstance, because he was just so over it and just didn't want to be bothered anymore. He was happy. So what that taught me was that I offered him too much. Because if he accepted that first offer, he would have took, $1,000 or $2,000, less. So that was the first lesson that I took from that. But I got it under contract. And again, I'm like a grassroots wholesaler at this point. So I'm going around to people that I know work on houses, like contractors and different things like that, showing them the deal, letting them know. And it didn't take me long to find a buyer. She was actually a very well-known businesswoman in the city of Cleveland, owned salons and different properties and things like that. And I'll never forget, she grilled me. And I appreciate her to this day for grilling me in that way, because she asked me a lot of questions that I didn't have the answer to, because I didn't realize that it was pertinent information. So that was another huge lesson on that first deal, was to always have the information. I need to look at this property as if I'm buying it. What information would I want to have if I were talking about, giving up several $1,000s for a property? So when it was all said and done, she agreed to buy it. I can't remember exactly what happened, but I messed up on the taxes. So it turns out, of course, once we got to closing, the taxes ended up having to come out of my portion. And so I only walked away, I think, with like $800. But that was the most, I always said, I'll say it till I die, that was the most valuable $800 I've ever made in my life, because at that moment I knew then that it was possible. And it was a wrap from there.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that there's certain things you can't learn unless you're taking action. Like, you can read all the books you want, you can take all the courses you want, but until you're actually in the arena and you have somebody asking you those questions, those real life questions, like it's uncomfortable the first time, but going forward, you'll likely never make that mistake again, which makes you more informed, which makes you a better wholesaler, which makes you a better business person in general. So it's like you have to kind of go through that uncomfortableness.
Exactly. And like I say, I know her. I still, to this day, she always tells me she's proud of me and things like that. But I always tell her, man, I so appreciate you, because, somebody else could have just blown me off. But that was again, a huge lesson. You're absolutely right. That next deal, I put together a buyer's packet, and I probably had too much information at that point.
That's cool. So how many deals have you done since that first deal?
I've done, I would say about maybe 175-ish wholesale deals.
Wow.
That next year, that second year for me, which would have been 2015, I really went crazy. I really ramped it up in terms of the marketing, and I was averaging like 3 to 4 deals a month.
Wow.
So I really ramped it up then. And then I always say wholesaling is kind of like the gateway strategy, because wholesaling naturally moves you into some of the other strategies. After I had obviously earned, some money and some capital, I was able to start closing on the properties myself and adding them to my portfolio. And then I was able to start, picking up the flips and rehabbing them and doing that way. So after a while, I had more tools in my tool belt. And so, I didn't have to wholesale. Some of these great deals that I was finding, I could keep, for myself.
Yeah. And what's really cool is that then you get to kind of cherry pick the better deals.
Exactly. I always tell people, wholesaling, it sharpens one of the most important skills is finding and analyzing deals, because regardless of what strategy you're going to use, you got to find a deal to do it. And wholesaling, you get so much practice that, you become, you develop creative ways of marketing and finding properties and learning how to analyze them and using different creative strategies, you know what I mean, that, work for everybody. So it's a great way to start out.
So out of all those 100 and I think you said 75 or 180 deals, what would you say was your most memorable and why?
I would say the first one. The first one is the most memorable. It's not the most lucrative, but it's the most memorable because, again, that one was invaluable. That first deal, when you complete that first deal from start to finish, from the lead generation to the contract to the close to this, but when you complete that first deal, it's so valuable because it confirms and solidifies that, hey, this can really happen for me. I can really do this. And from there, you just have to basically ramp up those efforts that you've already put in place. So that first deal for me, without a doubt, was definitely the most significant and the most important in my career thus far.
So I noticed that you're in Cleveland. Well, the first question is, what does the name Cleveland 10K stand for? What does that mean?
Cleveland 10K Homes meant to me, I wanted people to know, mainly the people of Cleveland, to know that you don't have to have thousands and thousands of dollars in order to be a property owner. I buy houses every week for 10K and less. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to highlight in the name of my company.
Let's how do you find value in a property that is that inexpensive? Because I kind of agree. We're actually looking at properties that are around that. We're looking in the Michigan area. And that's always kind of cool to see that you are so close in Ohio. Mm-hmm. I know why we find value. We bought a property and we paid like $15,000 for it. It was in great condition. It rents for $700 a month. We paid cash and we get a check every single month. We actually deposit in cash every single month. And so now the goal is to get more. I'm looking like if we get 10, 15 of these, we're sitting on gold. As long as we get good tenants, it's like, why wouldn't you do this?
Exactly. So again, for me, it's the circumstance of the seller. And then also, unfortunately, in Cleveland, there are a lot of areas, a lot of communities with lots of vacant and dilapidated homes that too often, become grounds for drugs and violence towards women. We had a lot of that going on, women coming up missing and then found in these houses and all kinds of conditions and things like that. So because I am from there, the city and the residents of the city are near and dear to my heart. So those vacant properties, especially a lot of them, you'd be surprised how many people own property in Cleveland and don't live there. So absentee owners. So I call those people up. I get their phone numbers. A lot of them, I skip the direct mail and I get their number and I call them up and I say, hey, listen, your house has been sitting vacant for X amount of years. You have X amount of taxes. This is what's going on in the city. Just last week, a young girl came up missing and she was found 2 streets over in a vacant house similar to yours. So if you don't plan on doing anything with it, sell it to me, let me rehab it and offer it to the community, in the form of housing. And I bought a lot of houses off just that. And when I give that spiel, I mean it. I'm serious about that, because it's an epidemic. It's a huge problem in Cleveland. If you're not in Cleveland or not from Cleveland, not familiar, then, you may not know, or it may not be as urgent to you. But for me, one vacant house turned into housing, that's a win for us as a city.
Absolutely. That's really cool. The same thing is kind of true in Michigan as well. You'll look at a house and you'll have this nice home, and then like right across the street, there's a house with the roof coming down, and there's a house with fire damage.
Right.
And I've looked at those properties, like that's huge opportunity there. It's like, I mean, you already have a built-in demand with there's an actual community there. It's just fix that one home or fix the 2 homes on that street. That's huge. I knew there was an opportunity there. I just didn't know how to capitalize. I think you taught me that. That's really cool. So what's your goals going forward? What are you working on going forward? Are you just going to continue to repeat the strategy that you've been doing thus far?
Pretty much so. Every year I try to, what I like to call is ramp it up. I like to try to, if you're familiar with Uncle G, Grant Cardone, kind of 10X it, and just do more. This year it's been on my heart to do a lot more educating, because again, there's real estate is, in my opinion and from my perspective, the number one, the top way, to generate wealth and to, establish passive income. And that really has to be the goal for us individually, and then us as a collective. And I think for far too long, young Black people have gone underrepresented in the real estate industry because of fear, because of intimidation, because of a lot of things. And so I feel like I've kind of been charged with this message of, hey guys, we can do this. You know what I mean? We are equipped, and if we educate ourselves and we do the work, we can do this, and we can shift the tide in terms of overall ownership. God didn't make any more land, so whoever owns the most of it wins.
Absolutely.
And we're right now we're kind of losing that game. But I believe that for those of us who have had success in the industry, it's a responsibility and an obligation to kind of reach back and each one teach one type vibe. So that's something that I really want to focus on going into the next year, is offering some educational opportunities and things like that to really share and empower and encourage, the people that this is something that we can absolutely do, and do it on a large scale.
So what does that look like? Is that courses, webinars?
So it does. It looks like all of that. Just recently, you said you had Kendra on. Kendra actually put together a beautiful event, the Real Estate Summit. There were 6 of us, and we all discussed a different real estate strategy. So there was something there for everybody, whether you had no money, like how I started, if you had some money to invest or whatever the case may be. Excuse me. So that was the first of many of those type of events to come. I'm also doing, what I found from doing that summit is that there are a lot of us who are interested in real estate, want to get into it, I've heard about it, believe in the power of it, but we don't know where to start. So one thing that I've really been focusing on in the last couple of months is offering consultation calls to folks who, again, you've heard about real estate, whether you heard about it on the summit from me or, we have a group of us, Kendra and Charm City and Hood Estates and all these different people, whoever you've heard it from, and you need the guidance and the support. That's what the consultation calls are really offering for people, is clearing up any misconceptions, the fear. You know what I mean? Is the more we know, the less fear that we have. So being able to hop on the phone with somebody and speak to them and really ask all your questions. And then most importantly on those calls, we're setting up a plan of action. So as soon as we hang up from that call, we know exactly what we can do right then and there to kind of get started on our real estate journey. So those are the type of things that I'm focusing on. I want to do larger scale summit seminar type deals. And then on a smaller scale, I want to make sure we're not leaving anybody behind. I want everybody to feel like they're supported, and that they have the guidance and the direction that they need. So a combination of that with the consultation calls.
That's cool. That's very cool. So what are some tips that you have to like a newbie investor, somebody who's never even touched real estate investing, but is interested in learning?
My number one tip is take action. I was on another podcast and that was what I said. I hate to be redundant, but it's like so many times, we have not because we ask not or because we do not. We get this information, we get information overload, and then we got so much information, we just don't do anything. And so the one thing, you can't have success with it. You can't find a house, you can't wholesale it, you can't sell it, you can't do anything until you take action. And I think it's kind of become cliche, but you have to be intentional about that, because there were some Fridays I didn't want to get out of bed at 5 a.m. and hang any signs and not know if I was going to get any calls. But it's bigger than just, like you said, that event. It's about establishing an attitude of consistency towards this one common goal. So my main tip would be to take massive, consistent action, commit to that, and success in whatever you do, it has no choice but to chase you down. So take action. My second tip would be to find someone, whether if you want to call it a mentor, group, whatever you want to call it, find somebody, be it in your area or now with technology, you can find them online. I got a whole bunch of cousins that hit me up and ask me questions, and I'm doing a deal here. What should I do there? Find somebody that you can relate to, that resonates with you, that is doing what you want to do, and that you can kind of learn from and pick up tips from.
Yeah. You mentioned the term cousin. I've seen that on your posts. What does that mean?
We all family. We all cousins. When you go to the family dinner and everybody is cousins, people you haven't seen in years, haven't talked to, but when we get to the family dinner, we are cousins, we are family. And it's the same thing in this real estate. I feel like I want all my cousins to come and sit at the table. We need all of us to be at the table. So if I'm already sitting at the table, I want to bring them along. We're family. It's just not, I'm not some, guru. Like, I'm just Nita. We're cousins, and I want to help, and I want to support, and I want to show love. And I believe that's the whole, just a sense of family and connectivity in that way.
I like it. So what motivated you during that 8 months, and even now, like what's driving you that's making you still put in the work, even though you've had some success and some things going well for you?
What originally motivated me was I just wanted more. I wanted more for myself. I felt like I had a lot in me. I felt like my potential was great. I felt like I was capable, of really doing a lot of good things and impacting people in a great way. And I wanted to kind of start to walk in that. And it was, like I said, I came from very humble beginnings. And so it was easy to feel discouraged. But I think, not to get too spiritual, but I just thank God for a made up mind. You know what I mean? Like I said, there were days when I didn't want to get up, or there were times when I went a month without getting any calls, or, you know what I mean? And I just am grateful for that kind of stay with it attitude, because I always knew that it was in me. Greatness was in me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I kind of had to just go through the process of it.
That's cool. And so you're Cleveland real estate, and we talked about how you have the internet, you have social media, and it opens you up to investing anywhere you'd want to, but you've stayed consistent with Cleveland. Why is that? I don't know what happened.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was muted. It was muted for a second, but so basically the question was, why have you kind of stayed in that same area in Cleveland?
Well, because again, that's my hometown. So for me, it's more than just investing. It's more than just money. There's that hometown connection. There's that genuine care for the city and for the people of the city. And so I've done, some things, some deals and things like that in other cities. I plan to do some investing with my family hood estates down in Florida. But for me, helping to create healthy happy, whole environments in Cleveland will always be a priority for me. So I won't ever go away from that.
Yeah. Do you think that staying in one location gives you an advantage over other people?
I do. I think that, you get an opportunity to kind of dominate. I've been working diligently, over the last few years in the city of Cleveland, working my way up, kind of earning my stripes, so to speak. And that's not always the case if you're moving around or even virtually wholesaling. It's kind of a different field. So I do think it gives you an advantage, at least, especially starting out, to kind of, focus on one market.
Mm-hmm. I've learned that it's so funny. We always get taught about the shiny object theory. And so a lot of times people will say like the shiny object is like, oh, well, I'm going to flip, or I'm going to wholesale, or I'm going to be a landlord. I'm going to buy multifamily because everybody's buying multifamily. But a lot of that can also be looking at shiny objects in other markets, because somebody might say, oh, we're making all this money in Philadelphia. And you're like, oh, we got to get to Philly. We got to get to Philly. We're making all this money in Atlanta. Oh, I got to get to Atlanta. That's where all the money's being made. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it takes discipline. And that's one of the things Aisha Selden kind of talked about, is like a lot of these ideas, they overlap. And so it's like you have to be disciplined to stay in one market, dominate that market, learn how to leverage that market. And you do get a competitive advantage because you know that market better than anybody. You know those neighborhoods like the back of your hand. You know things that don't appear just by doing a Google Earth search. You know the history. You know more than just what crime reports show. It's like no. Mm-hmm. And so it's like you know what it's worth. You know what you should be buying it for. And the person who's just Googling on the internet and running some comps through an agent, they're going to lose to somebody like you who's just stayed consistent. And I think that's huge for anybody. I have this argument / debate in our groups all the time. Like they're like, oh, well, let's go here. It's like, no, like we need to just find a lane and dominate that lane. Because as you stay in one lane, you get better, and you just become more creative in that lane. You make more money in that lane. So
absolutely,
I saw it and I was like, that's cool. I like that you are in a good market and you just stay in that market, for better or for worse.
And I think it matters too. Your reason why. Why are you investing? Is it solely about money and building a portfolio and this and the third? If that's the case, then that's one way to approach it. But again, for a person who my passion is again, the well-being of the city and the people of the city. So I think that matters too. A lot of people, they invest in different places and it doesn't matter. They just, show me the numbers of the deal. And if it works, it works. They don't have that same connection to the city and to the communities in that city.
Cool. So you mentioned that you've done more than wholesaling, but we haven't talked about any of that yet. Can you tell us what your first flip looked like?
My first flip was a total disaster. I don't even know how I rebounded from that. My first flip was a total disaster. I had bad contractors. I got the house at a great price because again, my wholesaling marketing got the house probably like $4,000. It wasn't in the best neighborhood. So looking back, what I know now, it should have been a very kind of baseline, safe, clean, and functional type of rehab. But I was, trying to be grandiose. And like I said, I had a bad contractor, ended up, quitting on me in the middle of the job. I had already paid him too much. He took some of my materials. So I lost on that deal. I can't lie. I definitely lost on that one. But again, it taught me a lot, taught me how to structure, how to look for a good contractor, the type of things to look for in terms of screening, and then also how to set up the pay structure so that, I wouldn't get burnt that next time. And since then, this year, we just finished number 9. So I've done 9 flips this year. And the thing I'm most proud about those flips is that I've been able to do the majority of them without being in Cleveland, because now I do have such a good team of contractors that I don't have to be there. I fly in and fly out, but I don't have to be there, and everything is still running smoothly. So that's the ultimate goal, is put it on kind of like autopilot.
That's cool. Are you funding those flips with your own cash, or are you using outside money?
Both. So, excuse me, a lot of them I fund myself because, again, I'm getting such great deals on the purchase price, that I have that capital to do the rehab myself. But there are some projects where people, have wanted to partner in with me, and I've done some hard money. I've used some other type of financing, so a combination of the two.
That's cool. Man, I think that I want to kind of circle back to that first flip, only because I think that it kind of relates to what you said about taking action. And there's a lot of people who won't ever do their first flip because they want the flip to be perfect, instead of learning what they need to learn with that flip. So it's like you have to pay for education some way. You're going to pay for it through college. You're going to pay for it by taking a course, or you're going to pay for it by making mistakes.
Right.
Like, you don't get away from having to pay for the knowledge, but that's a skill that you now have applied 9 times this year. And I'm sure you did well. And you probably applied it more than 9 times in your entire life. So it's like you have to make an investment at some point in time. And whether it comes through whatever form, I just think that the moral of this one is just take action, because I'm a huge proponent of taking action. I was talking about that yesterday. I was like, I'd rather take imperfect action than have perfect inaction. It's like, I don't want to sit around, and I've read a lot of books, but I don't want to sit around and read as many books as I can trying to learn to do it perfect. Because even though I've read all these books, I did a deal and it was nothing like what I read.
Right.
We still made it through. We're still alive. Like,
exactly.
So it's like, you just kind of have to like maneuver through it, and you'll get there. But like sitting around waiting, you'll get nowhere.
I think that's one reason why I'm glad that I'm kind of, I say self-learned or self-taught, whatever the case may be. I didn't have a mentor, anybody, that was kind of guiding me along, is that I had no choice but to take action. Like, that was my only, if I was going to do this, I had to just jump out there and do it. And with the flip, everybody was like, well, why do you want to do that? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I didn't get in this just to wholesale everything. Like, this is an amazing deal. I've run the numbers, and, and I felt confident going in. And although it didn't, again, pan out, it's one of those things where, again, I would have never, learned those lessons or had that experience had I, not taken that action. So that is key.
So how do you deal with people who they don't get it? Because I found that a lot of times, a lot of what you're doing, the average person doesn't do. So the average person can't really give you valid feedback on what you're doing, but you've done it anyway. So how do you deal with the people outside?
It was a struggle for me at one point, because I'm one of those type of people, like, when I find a good thing, I want to share it, and I want you to get it, and I want you to do it, have the good experience that I'm having with it. But the reality is like you said, everybody just won't get it. Everybody just won't understand. Everybody, can't catch the vision. So I've learned over time to be a seed planter. I plant seeds. Maybe it's not me who, is the direct source or cause of your growth. Maybe I plant the seed, and maybe Kendra comes and waters it, and this, and you know what I mean? And with the hope of that one day, you will get it and you will catch the vision. So that has been a great kind of like aha moment for me. Is like, hey, listen, you can't, like they say, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. So plant the best seed that you can plant, and wish people the best, and kind of keep it moving. Because the thing that I learned is that, while you're spending time trying to convince and, all this kind of stuff, there's somebody who does believe and needs, what you have to offer, what you have to say. So you do that person an injustice, by kind of trying to move this person along faster than what they're ready to move. So seed planting is my way of getting around that.
Nice. I meant to ask this question earlier, but you said that instead of sending letters, you'll just call the person directly. How do you get the phone number? Do you just Google them, or what do you do?
So I have a couple of different sources that I buy lists from, and sometimes the phone numbers actually come on the list. It'll give me the property address, the owner address, and the owner phone number. Sometimes I'll skip trace them. The other night, I kid you not, I was looking at a property actually on Zillow, and one of the photos on Zillow had an Instagram name on it. So I went right over to the Instagram page and sent them a DM. And it was
Nice.
like 1 o'clock in the morning. And lo and behold, the guy responded and we talked and we negotiated a deal right there over Instagram at like 1 in the morning. I closed on that property on Friday for 4K.
That's dope.
So,
That is dope.
so I get, again, because my start came from, I didn't have tools to, pay to skip trades or pay to do this. So all of my skills come from having to get it without having a lot of resources at my disposal. So, I use a lot of different tools to kind of track people down.
Yeah. I'm reading that book by Damon John called The Power of Broke. And that's like a really big element there. And I'm not done with it yet, but I kind of know where he's going.
Right. That's a great read.
No choice. You have to be scrappy. You have to send a DM because you can't, like, whatever. I don't know, but I don't know where I was going with that, but I hear a lot of that in this story, which is really cool and inspiring for everybody out there who they might not come from generational wealth. That's not an excuse. Like, there's still ways out there. It's like, if you're just kind of forget, maybe like you might think somebody has it easier, because that's one thing he talked about in the book too, is like you might think that having cash makes it easier, but having cash also can make you make mistakes where you go and you get into a whole lane just because you can fund it with $100,000 and you waste time, you waste money, you waste resources. And so it's like being without those resources might actually sharpen you as opposed to dulling you, like what people
Exactly, because it can cripple you, because people associate, money with power and with knowledge. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And when you have money, you oftentimes miss those opportunities, those learning opportunities, you know what I mean? Where I've gained some of my most valuable lessons by going out and doing it. So I'd put myself up against anybody. I don't care how much money you have. Like, I've done this, I've messed it up, and I've done it the correct way. So, I have a pretty good perspective on, how things should go.
That's cool. So what advice do you have for women in particular looking to do what you're doing?
That's a great question. My advice is to know your stuff, because like they say, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And, let's just keep it real. This is a male dominated field, and there are those sects of good old boys and, things like that. But again, one thing that cannot be denied is knowing your stuff and performing. So that has been my thing. I've had, instances and opportunities where I could have gotten into verbal exchanges, with people, both men and women, about different things as far as the industry is concerned. But again, what I've learned is people, you can't argue with greatness. I'm good at what I do, and I have the results to back it up. And that's just pretty much so the end of that story. So for the ladies, I would say, don't kind of try to fly above, the different stereotypes and things like that. Focus on knowing your stuff and performing, because that will speak volumes. Nobody can argue with that.
That was a great answer. So 2 quick questions and we'll wrap it up. What is your favorite book?
My favorite book is Motivation Manifesto, Brendan Burchard. Amazing book.
What's your favorite real estate book? You got muted again. You're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I don't know why this is happening. Sorry. My favorite real estate book, probably Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I know that's a cliche, cheesy answer, but again, that was one of the books that kind of introduced the concept of wealth and passive income and, financial freedom and that kind of stuff for me. It unlocked all of that in my mind. So
I don't know why that book is so powerful, but it is.
It is. It really is.
What does wealth mean to you?
Wealth for me is attached to legacy. Being wealthy is for me being healthy, being whole, not only myself, but for the people around me. And again, for those people that come after me, my family and otherwise, in terms of just leaving that legacy of, again, being healthy and just well.
Very cool. So, last question is, what do you want to leave the listeners with?
I want to encourage and empower anybody who's been on the fence in terms of real estate. If you've been thinking about it, if you've been scared, those of you who have started and stopped, those of you who are in the game now and continuing on. I just want to encourage and empower you. Real estate is the way to go. And I think a lot of us, again, are intimidated by it in some sort. Do not be intimidated. I think a lot of the characteristics that are required to be successful in real estate are innately in people of color. There's something about us that, that tenacity, that creativeness, that passion, that go get it, that's already in us. That's who we are as a people. And those are some of the main skills that you need in real estate. Don't be intimidated. There are people out there that look like you that are absolutely successful and that are getting to it. So again, no matter where you are, if you've not started, if you've already started, take action. Wherever you are on that spectrum, take action. As soon as you listen to this podcast, get off and do something that will put you one step closer to your goal of being a true bona fide real estate investor.
Very cool. Very cool. And where can people find out more about you and what you have going on?
Follow me on Instagram, HouseHunter216. I love interacting with my cousins on Instagram. We do lives, we do case studies, we break down deals. I'm doing an event, like I said, out in New York this week. So follow me on Instagram, HouseHunter216. You can also find me on Facebook at Nita Davidson.
Very cool. So thank you for coming on the show. A lot of gems, a lot of strong content. It's funny, I didn't have the script, so I think it allowed me to listen more and ask more questions that follow the conversation. So I felt really good about this interview and this podcast. For anybody that's interested in anything that we have going on, you can email us at info@capitaltodd.com. The website is capitaltodd.com. This has been episode number 46. This is Charles Oglesby, also known as Todd Millionaire, signing off.